is the evening edition of the virtual happy hour experience with the Drunken Grape. I am your host, Rob, and we have an awesome guest today. She is really quite a newcomer to LinkedIn and to social media, really started to blaze a fiery trail from the pandemic on. A speech pathologist, also what I call a giant humanitarian, has a whole movement she has started from scratch called Radiating Real. We're going to get into this. I want to welcome to you my guest, Nancy Burrows from California. Nancy, how you doing?
I'm wonderful. Thank you. Thank you so much for having me here, for the honor and privilege. I really appreciate it.
Hey, anytime. Listen, you've done a lot of great things in a pretty short window of time. It's actually really impressive. We were talking in the, I guess you could call it the Riverside FM room. It's not the Zoom room, but it's something like it, or the green room anyway. But you were talking about how you recently came on board on the LinkedIn that I didn't even realize you actually joined during the pandemic, which is quite phenomenal because a lot of us that are part of your community have been here for years, and it feels like you honestly have been here for years with us. And it's really telling of the challenges of the pandemic and really what led you to really take this explosive journey into LinkedIn and social media. I know you've talked about your past with trauma and abuse. You shared that with the public. That just takes tremendous will, heart, and courage to do so. And I really want to first thank you for that. I mean, I think that's incredible. And on top of it, you have a very demanding career as a speech pathologist. I mean, that takes a huge amount of education and know-how and time and energy in of itself. Well, how do you find the time to do all these things?
Sleep is lacking. I think it's just, I want to do it so badly, and it's not work. It's like a labor of love. So I love jumping on and recording or, putting a post together, or even my live show. It's time that I set aside that's self-care ultimately, because it feeds my soul. It nourishes my soul and fills my heart. So to me, I'm also not a big TV watcher. So when other people would probably be sitting and watching TV, I jump on and, communicate with my community and engage and show up and do my thing.
Yeah, I can relate. I think I cut cable 11 years ago. I'm not kidding. The bill here in Canada got ridiculous. It was like $200 and some odd a month to have that bundled in with your internet. And I just said, screw it. I'm just going to go to Netflix and the net and say goodbye to cable. And outside of sports, where I just go to a bar now and watch it largely, or, during the pandemic, it would be the plus one that you could cohabitate in their household to catch up on some of it or online. It's something you really don't miss. And it's, with your whole community that you've built, you really bridge together this brilliant community. And this is where you're really an extraordinary person. We're going to have drinks today on this show, of course. And I really think you've done some tremendous work is Radiating Real. Talk a bit about that, because I'll get to the impact you've had that I've read about people with the viewers. And if you're watching this, make sure to subscribe to this channel. Make sure to reach out to Nancy. I'm going to have all the details in the description of this show for you to find out how to reach out to and connect with Nancy via LinkedIn, email, all those good things. So, getting back to that whole movement, Radiating Real. This comes from your own experience. I know you were a victim of some serious trauma, sexual abuse, I believe, and other things. And how did you find the courage to stand up and get out of that? Because this ruins a lot of women. And quite honestly, most people that actually go through this are never the same. And you can't fault them for it. It's like grief. It's like loss. It's like trauma. All these things plug into, you just don't know how you're going to react or respond. What got you to get so strong to pivot forward?
I had incredible support from my family. I had a family that never doubted, that believed in therapy, was able to pay for therapy, and just supported me through all of it. And that's really, to me, what made the difference. And there was always a voice inside of me that was telling me along the way, like, don't mess this up. You're going to be pissed off at yourself later if you mess this up. And even though like I sort of thought I was broken beyond repair and wasn't really interested in living a really long life, there was something inside of me that knew there was a future that was very different from what I was living. And so that became what drove me. You know, I after I confronted my grandfather when I was 20 years old, I basically got to the headspace of I'm not giving him a minute more of my life. He's taken so much from me already. I'm not giving him a minute more, and rolled up my sleeves. And that's when I really dug in therapy. Now, it's taken me years. It's not something that happened overnight. It's been in and out of therapist's office because I, deal with one thing and then life changes and something else comes up. So it was just a long process of just not giving up and keep showing up. If I can just breathe through this moment, I can breathe through the next moment, I can breathe through the next moment. And before I know it, all those moments link together to be an hour, a day, a week, and so on. So that was really what got me through it. In terms of Radiating Real, that came out of when I came onto LinkedIn, I knew nothing. I had no plan. I didn't know anything about metrics. I didn't know what you were supposed to do or not supposed to do. I wasn't there to sell anything. I was just showing up, really. And so that's what I did. I just showed up and I was me. And what I noticed is I kept getting messages and comments about how real I was, how people thought it was amazing that you're so real and so honest and open. And it made me realize that if people are commenting on that, it must be rare. It's lacking. It's not there. And they're craving it because they responded to it. And so along the course of my life, I've worn several different masks, many of them, to just get by, to look like people wanted me to look, so people would leave me alone and not look twice at me because I didn't want anyone to know what was going on the inside. And coming onto LinkedIn, I will say that it was the first time in my life that I committed to being 100% real 100% of the time. And it has been life-changing for me, which has made me just absolutely determined to bring that to other people.
Yeah, and your impact has been huge. I read Tim Sohn's comment, I believe it was yesterday or the day before, citing how your movement and Radiating Real and your courage had him open up about leukemia. And I don't know if you know this, but my late father passed away from leukemia. So I know quite a bit about the nastiness of this disease. I have an idea of what he's living through with CML because that's the treatable form of leukemia and there's various stages to it. My father was older and much further along. I mean, he had to have blood transfusions every 3 weeks. I think Tim has to take medicine for it. But the fact that you gave him, and I love that guy. He's a terrific human being, and you know him well. You work with him on Shutout Saturday with Brian Schulman. And ladies and gentlemen, that is a show you want to tune into because it's about good vibes and silliness. It brings back your youth and childhood. And we all need that as adults, especially now. But what you've done with Radiating Real and the way that you had him come out of his shell is incredible. And that is obviously lending your background, whether you know it or not. I guarantee that comes from your speech pathology background. I had to go through a speech therapist when I was a little kid. I was a mute until I was 3. It's hard to believe because I talk a lot now, but I went through all these studies. They were wondering the only person I talked to was my late twin sister. I called her Cisa, not Lisa. And the platform nowadays to have something like that, to share with people your trauma and allow them to put their guard down and be real is really, really significant. I can't think of a more important time to have reached out and put together something like that, especially with the pandemic, which is wreaking havoc on relationships. Some people are cooped up realizing they don't really love each other. And how did I live with each other? How did we live together so long? Others have woken up to the trauma of hating their employment. We're seeing this to an industry I'm tied to a bit with hospitality. The conditions are terrible. People are undervalued there. There's no benefits for them. And then you move along to people who have trauma or illnesses. And this all ties into what you're doing. And, this is really the focus point of this show. The focal point of this is getting into this because you really, and there's a common theme of extraordinary drinks with extraordinary people on this show. It's like Michael Ray, 3.5 years ago, sitting at a job, miserable, wasn't smiling, and a stranger forced him to smile. He was dealing with the fallout of a marriage. He had lost one child. He was dealing with a child with nonverbal Down syndrome. And he decided to pivot. Russ Johns fell 3 or 4 stories, almost died, had to be rebuilt through many surgeries, still missing a finger. I think function of one of his arms is off. It cost him his marriage, yet he stood up and stood tall. And he's got the Pirate Syndicate. He's got the Pirate Broadcast and the Pirate Syndicate. And here you've come along with this brilliant movement that has further transformed everything that has preceded it. And the reach here has just been nothing but staggering.
I am so fortunate. I'm so privileged to have created something that people grabbed onto, that they shared with others, and that it has inspired and changed lives. And being witness to that is the biggest gift ever. When Tim and I with Radiating Real, we'd have conversations and you could just see it happen. Or, I started my business, The Chick with the Tool Belt, which is a program of finding your voice, telling your story, using personal content on social media to increase, engagement, visibility, community, business. It all came out of me just being me, and the beautiful community that I'm a part of reflecting back to me who I was and the difference I was making. Because, when you're in it, to me, it's not extraordinary. It's just who I am. It never occurred to me that it was extraordinary. People say I was brave for telling my story. Well, I've lived with it my whole life. So it's not, this story to me, but I know it is to others. And I know it's like, I'm here. My voice was meant to be a voice that allowed others to step fully into themselves, create that brave space for them to step into, and to really give them permission to be themselves. And I've done it my whole life without knowing it. It just was me. And then, like I said, this amazing community started reflecting back to me, and informing me, really educating me on the fact that who I am, how I do things is not the way everybody does it. It is rare. It is different. And me having to take some time to embrace that. It wasn't comfortable at first. It really wasn't. But now I've the more people I talk to who tell me, that it's changed them, inspired them, or when I speak, and do my keynote and I talk about the mask and I talk about, having been sexually abused till I was 16 years old, anorexia, major depressive episodes, 16 years into my marriage, realizing that I had recreated my abuse dynamic emotionally. Like, I put it all out there for people who can't yet do it for themselves. And people come to me with such extraordinary stories, so brave, so honest, and they've so badly want to be themselves. They want to find who they are. They don't want to carry this burden around anymore. And so what's happened for me has been extraordinary. What's happened for me should not have happened in 8 months being on LinkedIn. It's right. No. Everybody tells me it's like
actually, I think it should have, because everything has every season has a reason, right? And your season and your time was to show up at this time during the pandemic when it's true.
Right. It was meant to be, because everything has gone so smoothly. Well, it's been so synchronous. But traditionally, you don't show up on LinkedIn in less than, I think I was maybe 3 or 4 months in and I had 2 live shows. It doesn't.
Yeah, wow. That's pretty incredible.
Not supposed to happen. That's not how it goes. And yet, because it was my season, my time, and because I just showed up, I didn't worry about anything else. I just showed up. I just started. Things happen. And that's one of my biggest messages to people, like, just show up. And that's the idea with Radiating Real, is show up however you are. Don't worry. If you're in the middle of the worst of your life, share it, because there's somebody else out there who has either been there or is there right now. And giving each other permission. I always say we're all living life, so we know how crappy it can be. We know how hard it can be. Yet no one's talking about how hard it is and how crappy it is at times. So maybe if we start talking about that, we can unburden ourselves. We can take off these masks that we're wearing and really connect with one another. Because I know from my experience, wearing that mask, you can only let people in so far. In order for relationships to grow, you need to be real and honest and vulnerable with one another. And it has to happen from both sides. So I was never willing to go that far. I was stuck. I mean, when I talked about being sexually abused a week after getting onto LinkedIn on a telethon on Russ John's segment. That was the first time. Yes, full circle. The first time I had ever said it out loud publicly. I talked in my life about it with people who knew me or people I met. That was fine. But I had always held back because I work in the public school system. And people have ideas about people who have been abused who choose to work with children. And that always held me back. But as I was talking about my childhood trauma, it hit me. And in my head, I said, Nancy, you're part of the problem. If you won't say it, how can you expect anyone else to talk about it? And nothing has changed. My abuse came out when I was 16 years old. I'm 48. And really nothing has changed. And so putting out those taboo topics, having those real conversations, let's talk about all this stuff that we're all thinking about, but we're hiding from one another and we are literally killing one another. When I went through my divorce, I thought I was failing at divorce. I had this internal imaginary report card and thought I was failing at divorce. And you don't fail at divorce, you get through divorce. Like, that's what it is. But because everyone else that I had seen go through divorce had done it so much more gracefully, I was convinced I was doing it wrong. Until I started talking to people and they're like, oh my gosh, no, I used to cry myself to sleep, or, da-da. But I didn't know that part. And so I was beating myself up and I was feeling less than, and I was getting depressed because I couldn't do it any better until I started talking to people and realized, wow, I'm not the only one. This was true for so many people. And when you start talking about it, you're not alone. It takes away the power of that secrecy. And it normalizes it for one another. And those are huge.
Yeah. And, you nailed it. I mean, you couldn't say that better. We all go through our own personal battles. I mean, I may not look it, but I went through a phase where I was bullied. I was a small kid. I was an academic kid. My athletic capabilities came later. I mean, I don't recommend this. I picked up judo, got good at it, and beat down every bully. Literally, I beat down every bully. And I told a lady that I can't remember who I had this conversation with, who actually deals with anti-bullying. She goes, well, Rob, that's one way to deal with it. That's fiercely effective, but that's not going to work out for 99% of the population. But to tell you of the trauma of it, it still carried on like a chip on my shoulder, probably until my mid-20s, when I started to shift that demon off my back. And I would attribute a lot of it to, for me anyway, was finding myself when I first went away and went to work on cruise ships for a living. And I was traveling internationally. And you can't progress. And this is where your movement is so powerful. And this is where the coaching and the helping of people is just so significant. You can't progress until you let that monkey off your back, and you have to swim through it. It's like swimming through that icy pond that nobody wants to jump in. Funny story, I actually had to do that at my friend's cottage. He's got a glacial lake, and anybody that's new there has to jump through this icy pond. And it made me think of the icy pond, because who the hell wants to swim 100 feet through an icy pond?
And you can't. It's difficult in that cold water to get your muscles to do it. Exactly. Like nobody wants to. And when you get there, it's like your muscles, your brain can't get your body to do exactly what you want it to do. So it's a perfect analogy, quite frankly.
And you realize you're right. Yeah. And you realize people love you. There is love out there. You just have to embrace it. You have to open your heart to it. People have been there the whole time. It's just whether we choose to accept it or not.
Right. And part of Radiating Real is getting to experience that unconditional love and that unconditional acceptance. That was given to me when I was in my 20s. And it was the first time I was at UCLA, and there are 3 women that I'm still dear friends today, like are so deep in my heart. Raquel Boris, Courtney Franklin, and Candace Spann. And they were the first women that made me feel safe sharing my story. And what happened when I told them why it was so powerful was they did not look at me any differently. They didn't run away. They didn't look at me with pity. And those were important things. I needed to experience that unconditional love and acceptance to know that it was okay, that there were people.
And cheers to that. We're going to do the cheers to that, because this is the happy hour, people. You have to crack your drinks. This is, actually, I'm going to ask you, what are you drinking? You mentioned this is a Mondavi Sauvignon Blanc.
It's actually a Justin. I finished the Mondavi the other night, but this is a Justin. And I joke, my boys are Robert, Justin, and Josh. Like those are the ones that are pretty much always in the house. So, cheers to that. Cheers to you.
Cheers to that.
We'll have the conversation. I so appreciate it.
Absolutely. This is way overdue. You truly are remarkable. I'm blessed to have you on this show. That's a great wine you're drinking. It's as finesseful as you are. It's aromatic. Sauvignon Blanc is really one of those wines that you can take if somebody wants to get away from the medium everything, which is what Pinot Grigio is and what my good friend Jennifer Simonati Bryan, Master of Wine, calls it. I think she's near you in Los Angeles somewhere. But something that is zesty yet dry, but has a lot of character to it would be Sauvignon Blanc. It tends to have citrus and more stone fruit characteristics at times, depending on the region it's from. California would definitely be more towards the stone fruit side. Peach, apricot, things like that make its presence known as well as gooseberry, elderflower. I mean, there's some neat pungent characters to Sauvignon Blanc. It's an ancient grape. It's one of the famous Bordeaux varietals. Most people think all red wine, but Sauvignon Blanc is prolific in the region of Bordeaux. And as I was mentioning to you and to the viewers, a little bit of trivia. Cabernet Sauvignon is actually from a crossing of Sauvignon Blanc and Cabernet Franc. And most people don't know that. On my hand, this is awesome. This is a tequila. This is rare. So this bottle is about $110 US in Mexico. You can't get it. It's very hard to get it in the States. Like most tequila, it comes from the Jalisco province, which I believe is just north of Guadalajara, comes from the blue agave, which is this root plant that grows, and it grows into large stalks. This is awesome. The history behind this añejo, it's aged 2 years in bourbon barrels, is the Spanish ran out of brandy in the 15th century, the conquistadors. And they came across mezcal in this weird product called tequila from the Aboriginals. And this is what led to tequila production taking a hold en masse today because they wanted to enjoy their drinks. Obviously, Spain was really far away. You had to ship it, but this is awesome. Cheers to you. Wonderful notes of honey, a little bit of hints of caramel. There's some herbaceousness. That's just herbal due to the characteristics of the blue agave. I don't know as much about tequila as I know about wine and beer, for instance. I'm much more prolifically versed on those subjects. But this is really cool. I mean, you've got honey in here. You've got a bit of vanilla and coconut flavors, a little bit of spice. This is an award winner. This usually wins the national championships in Mexico. It's got this cool stopper on top. I always laugh. If you run out, it's your last shot. But I am so happy to have a drink with you on the happy hour. Nancy, it's always great to catch up with you. What's the best way for people to reach out to you?
People are, easiest to find me probably on LinkedIn because it's my name and it's Nancy Barrows, MSCCC SLP. I know you'll put that in there. My email.
I will.
Also my name, Nancy.D as in Deborah.Barrows @gmail. I'm kind of all over, and because I work in the public school system, my name changes from platform to platform because I'm trying to outrun students and families so that I can keep my content real. So I am on Instagram and I am on Facebook, but it's harder because I have different names there. But you can do Calendly, calendly.com/Nancy Barrows. And you know how to find me. So if there's any difficulty, smoke signals to Rob will get you to me.
Listen, I think you've been tremendous. I love the fact that you came up onto LinkedIn with just a purpose to help others. Michael Ray has done the same thing. Some of the greatest people on LinkedIn are not there on their entrepreneurial or career journey. I must admit, I'm mostly on my entrepreneurial journey, but I do give back quite a bit to the community too. And I think that's really important. But you've built your whole platform about giving back because obviously you have a career that has allowed you to live very well. You've worked very hard at it. It takes a high level of education to get there. And I really salute you and cheers to you, Nancy. Much love. It's incredible what adversity you've overcome. Listen, this has been a brilliant show. Ladies and gentlemen, whatever you decide to do, make sure to reach out to Nancy. Once again, it's going to be in the show notes. This is Rob and Nancy on that virtual happy hour with the Drunken Grape.